It was early December, the kind of gray, quiet morning where time seems to move a little slower. I was doing my usual Amazon delivery route through the northern edge of town, the older part, where the houses sit farther apart and the driveways are long and unpaved. The air was damp and cold, and I remember my fingers stinging a little as I typed out the next address into my handheld. It was a drop-off order, no signature required. Just leave the package at the door. I turned down a narrow gravel path that barely passed as a road. It led through a line of leafless trees, thin and skeletal, with patches of frozen mud scattered along the edges. The house didn't show up until I was nearly right in front of it. An old, two-story place with faded siding and a crooked porch. Nothing unusual in a neighborhood like this, but something about it made me slow down more than usual. I noticed right away that the front door was already open, not swung wide, just barely cracked, like someone had walked in and forgotten to close it. There weren't any cars outside, no lights in the windows. The package was small, just a padded envelope, light enough to toss. I should have just set it down and walked away, but something about the open door pulled at me. I stepped up onto the porch and paused. There was a sound, low and uneven, coming from somewhere inside. Not talking, not music. More like a soft scraping, almost like something dragging across the floor. I stood there for a moment, trying to place it, but it didn't match anything familiar. I glanced through the crack in the door. The hallway inside was dim, lit only by what little light filtered in from the overcast sky behind me. There were no decorations, no rugs or pictures. Just bare floorboards and a narrow staircase leading up. I thought I saw something shift, just at the edge of view. A flicker of movement, low and fast, but when I blinked, it was gone. I called out, just in case.
Hello?
No answer. The sound inside stopped. That should have been my cue to leave, but I stepped a little closer, the package still in my hand. Maybe I thought someone was hurt. Maybe I was just being stupid. As soon as I crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind me, hard. The sound echoed through the empty space like a gunshot. I turned, heart racing, and grabbed the handle, but it wouldn't turn. It wasn't locked, just stuck, swollen with moisture maybe, or warped from age. I shook it once, then again, harder, but it didn't budge. Behind me, something creaked. Not the floor, higher, like a slow weight shifting at the top of the stairs. I didn't move. I just stood there, frozen, trying to control my breathing. Then came the sound again. Not from upstairs this time, but from below. A kind of muffled cry, distant but human, rising from under the floor. The house had a basement. The panic didn't come all at once. It crept in slowly, with each second I stood there. The silence thickened, and every corner of the hallway seemed darker than it had moments before. I looked down the hall again. There was a room at the end with a window. If I could get there, maybe I could get out. I moved quickly. I don't remember hearing footsteps, but I had the clear sense that something else was moving too, just out of view, just behind me. A cold draft followed me as I reached the room. Then I heard it. A scream. Not loud, but long, stretched and ragged, as if whoever it came from had been screaming for hours. I dropped the package without thinking. It hit the floor with a flat thump. I grabbed the edge of the window, shoved it open, and pulled myself through before I could think twice. The frame scraped my jacket and the sill caught my leg. But I was outside. The air felt heavier, colder. I didn't look back. I ran to the van, slammed the door shut, and drove until the house disappeared in the air. I didn't report it. I didn't go back. The delivery showed as completed in my app, and no one ever followed up. I don't know who placed that order or if anyone ever opened the door again, but I still think about that morning, the way the house seemed to breathe. The sound of something waiting beneath the floor. The scream that didn't stop. And sometimes I wonder, not what I saw, but what I would have seen if I'd stayed. It happened last spring, in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Cedarville. One of those older parts of town where the houses were built too close together, and the trees seemed to lean over everything. I'd been working as an exterminator for 6 years at that point, and I thought I'd seen just about everything. Roach infestations so thick the walls looked like they moved, raccoons nesting in attics, even a python once in someone's dryer. Nothing really got to me anymore. That day I was following up on a service request flagged urgent. Reports of scratching, chewing, and something large in the basement. It was a single-family home, red brick, 2 stories, tucked behind an overgrown hedge like it was trying to hide. The woman who filed the request wasn't home when I arrived, but the front door was already open, hanging a few inches ajar. That should have been the first red flag. As I stepped out of the van, 2 rats, big ones, not scared of me in the slightest, came tearing through the doorway and vanished into the bushes. That kind of boldness usually meant a serious infestation. I grabbed my gear and walked up to the door, announcing myself out of habit. No response. The air around the house smelled off, like mildew and rotting meat mixed with something chemical I couldn't place. I stepped inside. The house was still. Too still. No ambient hum from a fridge, no distant creak of pipes. Just silence, and that smell, thicker now. I moved slowly, scanning the baseboards and corners, checking for droppings or nests. The living room was empty. No furniture, no curtains. Dust layered thick across the floor, like no one had lived there for years. As I moved further in, I kept catching small movements out of the corner of my eye, flickers in the shadows, things slipping just out of view. The air felt heavier with each step. I was almost at the kitchen when the door behind me slammed shut. Hard. The echo rang through the hollow rooms like a warning shot. I spun around, heart suddenly racing. The door looked normal. No wind, no obvious reason for it to have moved. But it was closed now, and the smell was stronger. I called out again, louder this time. Still no answer. That's when I heard it. A faint noise from the basement. Not a scurry or a squeak, more like a shifting mass. Something alive. Something waiting. I hesitated at the basement door, hand hovering over the knob. I didn't want to go down there. Every instinct told me to leave. But I've never walked out of a job unfinished. The stairs creaked under my weight as I descended. The flashlight beam cut through layers of dust and cobwebs. Halfway down, the noise grew louder. A rustling, shuffling sound that filled the air. I reached the bottom and turned toward the source. The beam hit the far wall, then the floor, and then movement. Rats. Thousands of them, covering the floor like a living carpet, crawling over each other, silent and focused, all facing the same direction. Me. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The beam flickered as they began to move. Not randomly, not startled, but deliberately, like they'd been waiting. I dropped the light and turned, stumbling back up the stairs. When I reached the top, I grabbed for the doorknob, but it wouldn't turn. Jammed. I pulled harder. Nothing. Behind me, the sound was growing louder, closer. Then, nothing. I must have blacked out. When I came to, it was morning. Light streamed through the cracked door, which now opened without resistance. The house was empty. No rats. No smell. Just the faint trace of dust in the air and a dropped flashlight on the steps. I left without packing up my gear. I didn't file the report. I never went back to that address, and I never saw it come up in the system again. I don't know what I walked into that day, or what was waiting for me in that basement. But sometimes I wonder what